Welcome to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast. Today we're going on a deep dive into Imam al-Ghazali's The Jewels of the Qur'an. I'm really excited to, uncover those hidden gems within the Qur'an with you.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating work, and al-Ghazali himself was quite a remarkable figure. He lived in the 11th century, right,
Right.
during a golden age of Islamic scholarship, and he really embodied that spirit, a master of so many fields, theology, philosophy, law, and Sufism too.
Yeah.
And the jewels of the Quran really brings all those perspectives together, I think.
So for our listener, you've brought us a copy of The Jewels of the Qur'an, wanting to understand kind of its core concepts and how it views the Qur'an.
Yeah.
I have to admit, the title alone is captivating. What's al-Ghazali's unique perspective here?
Well, he begins with this really powerful metaphor. He compares the Quran to a vast ocean
Okay.
containing all sorts of precious jewels and valuables, and the deeper you dive into this ocean, the more treasures you uncover.
I love that analogy. It's like we're setting off on this treasure hunt, searching for these pearls of wisdom beneath the surface. So how do we start diving? Where do we even begin to look for these jewels?
Well, al-Ghazali guides us, right? He's like, okay, the Quran has 6 main objectives, or aims,
Okay.
each leading to a specific kind of treasure. Think of these aims as like a map guiding us towards different types of knowledge and understanding.
Okay, a treasure map. I'm intrigued. What are these 6 aims that we should be looking for as we kind of explore the Quran?
So, first and foremost, right, the Quran aims to provide knowledge of God. This is like the ultimate goal, like the most precious jewel we can discover. It's about understanding who God is, his attributes, his relationship with creation.
So getting to know God, his essence, that's the first aim. Makes sense that that would be the most precious treasure.
Yeah.
What comes next?
Then the Quran lays out the path to God. This aim is all about providing practical guidance on how to draw closer to the divine. It outlines the steps we can take, the practices we can engage in, the inner transformations we need to undergo, all to strengthen our connection with God.
So it's not just about knowing God theoretically,
Yeah.
but about actively seeking him, walking the path that leads to him.
Exactly, yeah. And that path includes understanding the consequences of our actions.
Right.
That's where the third aim comes in. The Quran describes the conditions of punishment and reward in the afterlife.
So this aim is about outlining the reality of the hereafter, the accountability we face for our choices in this life.
Precisely. It reminds us that our actions have consequences,
Right.
both in this world and the next. And this understanding motivates us to strive for righteousness and avoid those actions that lead to harm.
Yeah, it's like a moral compass, almost, guiding us towards a life that aligns with God's will and leads to that ultimate happiness. This is fascinating. Okay. So we have knowledge of God, the path to God, and the conditions of reward and punishment. What are the remaining aims?
Well, in a world, filled with diverse beliefs and ideologies, the Quran also aims to refute falsehood.
Okay.
It clarifies misconceptions about God, religion, nature of reality. It defends the truth of Islam and provides a clear understanding of its principles.
So this aim is about kind of clearing the path, almost like removing obstacles and distortions that prevent us from seeing the truth clearly. It's
Yeah.
about establishing a firm foundation based on sound knowledge and reasoning.
Exactly. And once that foundation is established, the Quran then provides practical guidance for building a just and equitable society.
Right.
That's where the fifth aim comes in, outlining legal judgments, the Islamic law or Sharia.
So this aim is about translating the Quran's principles into a system of laws that governs every aspect of life, right?
Yeah.
From individual conduct to social interactions to economic transactions.
Precisely, yeah. It's about establishing justice, fairness, and order in society. And finally, the Quran points towards various sciences, showing how knowledge and understanding stem from divine revelation.
This aim is fascinating. It suggests that seeking knowledge, exploring the world around us, isn't separate from our spiritual journey, but an integral part of it.
Exactly. The Quran encourages us to contemplate the wonders of creation, to delve into the mysteries of the universe, and to use our intellect as a tool for understanding God's wisdom.
Wow, these 6 aims really paint a comprehensive picture of the Quran's purpose and scope. But I'm curious about the jewels themselves, these treasures of knowledge we're seeking. Does al-Ghazali say anything more about how we should think about the types of knowledge within the Quran.
He does. He introduces this beautiful analogy of 3 grades of knowledge,
Okay.
each represented by a different colored gemstone.
Ooh, gemstones. Okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this this color-coded system.
So imagine you're looking at like a collection of precious gemstones, right?
Yeah.
The most precious, the rarest of them all would be like a radiant red gemstone.
Okay.
This represents the knowledge of God's essence.
Okay.
It's the most difficult knowledge to grasp because it deals with like the very nature of the divine, which is beyond like our full comprehension.
So this knowledge is like a rare ruby, hidden deep within the ocean of the Quran. Precious, elusive, and requires, a lot of effort to find.
Precisely. It's a knowledge that we can only glimpse partially in this life, through contemplation, reflection, spiritual purification.
Right.
Then we have a vibrant yellow gemstone.
Okay.
More common than the red, but still precious. This symbolizes the knowledge of God's attributes.
So we move from the mystery of God's essence to, like, his qualities, his characteristics, things like his mercy, his justice, his power, wisdom, love.
Exactly. The Quran provides more information about these attributes because they help us understand God's actions and relate to him in a meaningful way. They allow us to develop a personal connection,
Yeah.
with the divine.
So red for the essence, yellow for the attributes.
Hmm.
What about the third type of knowledge? What gemstone represents that?
That's represented by like a serene bluish-gray gemstone.
Right.
Think of this as the most accessible type of knowledge, focusing on God's actions. The Quran is filled with stories about prophets, historical events, examples of God's interaction with humanity.
So this knowledge is more concrete, more grounded in the realm of history and human experience.
Mm.
It's about understanding how God interacts with the world and learning from the examples of those who came before us.
Exactly. And this knowledge helps us, understand his will, learn from the past, and apply those lessons to our own lives. Gives us practical guidance for navigating the challenges of our daily existence.
Yeah. I'm seeing a pattern here almost. It's like al-Ghazali is suggesting that, the deeper, more abstract the knowledge is, the less direct information the Quran provides. Like those rare red gemstones, they require more effort and contemplation to uncover.
That's a very astute observation.
Yeah.
He's highlighting that some things are meant to be contemplated and reflected upon,
Right.
not necessarily fully grasped in a concrete way. It's about engaging our hearts and minds, not just our intellect.
That makes sense. And it makes those red gemstone moments, those glimpses into God's essence, all the more valuable.
Right.
So we've got our treasure map, 6 aims, 3 grades of knowledge.
Yeah.
What else does al-Ghazali point out about our, our journey of exploring the Quran?
He uses this beautiful imagery to describe the process. He says, the journey to God is like a picture being gradually unveiled.
Unveiling a picture. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not like, reading a textbook from cover to cover, but more like peeling back layers, like to reveal this hidden masterpiece, one brush stroke at a time.
Exactly. And this gradual unveiling involves personal transformation and spiritual growth. So to illustrate this process, al-Ghazali divides the path to God into 3 main divisions: sincerity, truth, and the path itself.
This is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about these divisions, these steps on the path to God.
All right, so the first division, sincerity, is all about purifying our intentions. It's about recognizing that the pursuit of knowledge, especially knowledge of the divine, should be solely for God's sake.
Okay.
It's about moving away from hypocrisy, self-righteousness, or seeking worldly gain from our understanding.
So before we even start building our understanding, we need to make sure our foundation is strong.
Mm-hmm.
Our motives are pure, and our hearts are in the right place.
Precisely. Sincerity lays the groundwork for a genuine and transformative spiritual journey. Then comes the division of truth. This is where we start engaging with true knowledge of God's essence, attributes, and actions.
So once the foundation is solid, we can start building the walls of our spiritual house with knowledge and understanding. We begin to see the world through the lens of divine revelation.
That's a wonderful way to put it. And as we acquire this knowledge, it naturally leads to action. That's where the third division, the path, comes in.
Okay.
This division is all about putting our knowledge into practice.
So the path is about taking those bricks of knowledge and building a life that reflects our understanding of God. It's not enough to just, know things, we have to live them.
Absolutely. It's about embodying our knowledge in our actions and relationships, making our lives a testament to our faith. And this involves cultivating virtues, overcoming vices, and striving to live in accordance with God's will.
This is a beautiful way to think about the process of spiritual growth. It's a journey of continuous learning, purification, and action.
It is. And al-Ghazali, being the brilliant scholar he was, provides us with tools to navigate this journey. He emphasizes the importance of allegory in understanding the Qur'an's deeper meanings.
Oh yeah, the allegories. I was wondering when those would come up. I've always been fascinated by how stories and symbols can unlock these deeper meanings. Why do you think al-Ghazali relies so heavily on allegory in the jewels of the Qur'an?
Remember, he's dealing with complex, often abstract theological concepts, right?
Right.
Allegory acts as a bridge
Okay.
between the visible world, we experience with our senses, and the invisible world, the realm of the spirit.
So it's like he's taking these complex spiritual ideas and making them more tangible, more relatable through symbols and metaphors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by doing so, he's inviting us to think beyond the literal meaning of the text and engage with its deeper, more esoteric dimensions.
Can you give me an example of how he uses allegory in the book? I'm really curious to see how this works in practice.
Certainly. One striking example is his use of red brimstone to symbolize the purification of the soul.
Red brimstone. Interesting. Okay, help me connect the dots here. How does red brimstone relate to purification?
Well, brimstone, also known as sulfur, has this fiery quality. It's associated with intense heat, in the process of purification. Al-Ghazali uses this image to describe how the soul, through trials and tribulations, is cleansed of its impurities, just like impurities are, burned away by fire.
Ah, I see. It's like those trials we face in life, the things that feel like fire and brimstone actually help to refine us and purify us. They burn away our negativity, our ego, our attachments, and allow our true essence, our pure soul, to shine through.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
You're really starting to grasp the essence of al-Ghazali's allegorical approach. And this is just one example, right? He uses a variety of symbols and metaphors throughout the book to illuminate that spiritual journey and make it more accessible to the reader.
Yeah. This makes me even more excited to delve deeper into the jewels of the Qur'an. But before we do, you mentioned that al-Ghazali goes beyond just allegory and actually analyzes specific verses in detail.
Mm-hmm.
How does he approach this analysis?
He introduces this fascinating categorization of verses into jewels and pearls.
Okay.
Both are precious, but in different ways.
Okay, so we've got jewels and pearls, both valuable, but serving different purposes. I'm intrigued. What's the difference between them?
Jewel verses, according to al-Ghazali, are those that focus on the attributes and essence of God. They
Right.
delve into those profound mysteries of the divine, revealing his oneness, his power, his infinite wisdom, and his relationship to creation. Think of them as diamonds,
Okay.
sparkling with that light of divine truth.
So these jewel verses are all about like getting to know God deeply, understanding his nature and his qualities. They're like windows into the divine realm,
Yeah,
allowing us to glimpse the majesty and mystery of God.
precisely. They provide the foundation for our faith, our understanding of who God is, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
And what about the pearl verses? What makes them special?
Think of pearl verses as pearls of wisdom, guiding our actions and conduct. They provide practical guidance on how to live a righteous life, covering topics like prayer, charity, interactions with others, ethical principles, and social responsibility. They're the practical application of the knowledge we gain from the jewel verses.
Ah, so these pearls are all about applying our knowledge of God to our daily lives, making our actions reflect that divine wisdom we've learned.
Right.
They, bridge the gap between theory and practice, between knowing and doing.
You've got it. They're about translating our understanding of God into concrete actions, transforming ourselves and the world around us.
This categorization is brilliant. It shows how understanding God's nature, those jewel verses, leads to righteous action, those pearl verses.
Yeah.
They're interconnected.
Exactly. And al-Ghazali emphasizes this interconnectedness throughout the book. He shows how knowing God is inseparable from serving him and living a life that pleases him.
Right.
It's a holistic approach to understanding the Quran and living a life of faith.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. 6 aims, 3 grades of knowledge, allegory as a tool, and this fascinating distinction between jewel and pearl verses.
Mhm.
Now, I'm dying to hear about those specific verses al-Ghazali chooses to analyze in detail.
Well, he delves into quite a few verses,
Okay.
but two of the most notable examples are the Surah of Sincerity
Right.
and the Verse of the Throne.
Those are powerful verses.
Eh.
The Surah of Sincerity is a short but incredibly powerful chapter in the Quran.
Right.
And the Verse of the Throne is known for its magnificence and grandeur. What insights does al-Ghazali offer about these verses?
He highlights their significance in understanding the core tenets of Islam. The Surah of Sincerity, despite its brevity, eloquently emphasizes God's oneness.
Okay.
It refutes any notion of polytheism or associating partners with him.
Right.
It's a powerful declaration of Tawhid, the Islamic concept of God's absolute unity.
It's amazing how such a short chapter can hold so much weight, such a profound message about God's unique and absolute nature. What does he say about the Verse of the Throne?
The Verse of the Throne, on the other hand, is like a grand tapestry,
Yeah.
woven with these threads of divine power and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It affirms God's absolute dominion over all creation, his eternal existence, and his all-encompassing awareness. It's a verse that evokes awe and wonder, reminding us of our place within his grand design.
Yeah, it's a verse that evokes a sense of humility and awe. Recognizing our dependence on the one who holds all of creation in his hand.
Precisely. And al-Ghazali delves into the intricacies of these verses, exploring their linguistic beauty, their placement within the Qur'an, and their profound implications for our understanding of God.
This is all so captivating.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder, how can we, as readers who may not be, deeply versed in Islamic scholarship, apply al-Ghazali's ideas to our own lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's one of the most beautiful aspects of the jewels of the Qur'an. It's not just for scholars. It's for anyone seeking a deeper understanding of the Qur'an and a closer relationship with God. It's for anyone who wants to uncover those precious jewels and apply their wisdom to their lives.
So it's not about, being an expert in theology, but about approaching the Quran with a sincere heart and a willingness to learn.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about cultivating that mindset of a pearl diver,
Mhm.
seeking those hidden gems of wisdom and applying them to our own lives.
Yeah, this has been an incredible journey so far.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm already seeing the Quran in a new light, appreciating its depth and symbolism in a way I never have before.
That's the beauty of al-Ghazali's work.
Yeah.
It opens up new avenues for understanding and connecting with that divine message.
For our listener, who's probably just as eager to keep exploring as I am, stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into the jewels of the Quran, where we'll delve into al-Ghazali's analysis of specific verses and the practical implications of his work. Welcome back to our deep dive into the jewels of the Quran. Before we dig into those specific verses, I'm curious about something. We've been talking about these jewels and pearls. This categorization feels so unique to al-Ghazali. What led him to make this distinction?
You've hit on something really crucial about al-Ghazali's approach. He doesn't just present the Quran's teachings. He wants us to understand how to engage with it. And the jewels versus pearls is a brilliant tool for that. Remember, he was a master of many disciplines, including Sufism,
Right.
which emphasizes inner transformation.
Right. So it's not just about intellectual knowledge,
Yeah.
but about the impact that these verses have on our hearts and actions.
Exactly. So the jewel verses, right, focusing on God's essence and attributes are the foundation. They build awe, love, and understanding of the divine. But that understanding must lead somewhere.
Hence the pearls.
Precisely. The pearl verses provide the actionable wisdom, how to pray, treat others justly, even how to approach worldly matters with a God-conscious heart. They're pearls of guidance strung together by the thread of knowing God.
Okay, that clarifies things a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not that one type of verse is better than the other,
Right.
but they serve different purposes in our journey.
Exactly. It's like building a house. You
Yeah.
need the solid foundation of the jewels to support the practical structure of the pearls.
Right.
And that structure is what allows us to live in the house, so to speak.
That's such a clear way to think about it. Now I'm even more eager to hear about those specific verses that al-Ghazali kind of unpacks. You mentioned the Surah of Sincerity and the Verse of the Throne stand out. Let's start with the Surah of Sincerity. What makes it a jewel in his view?
Remember, the jewels illuminate God's nature. The Surah of Sincerity, though, short,
is a powerful declaration of God's absolute oneness, known as Tawhid in Islam. It refutes any notion of partners or divisions within within the divine.
And it's right after Surah al-Ikhlas in the Quran, which also discusses God's attributes and actions, right? Is there a connection there?
Al-Ghazali picks up on that. He
Yeah.
points out that this placement is intentional.
Okay.
It's like a crescendo, first describing God's qualities, then emphatically proclaiming he is one.
So the placement itself reinforces the message like an exclamation point, emphasizing God's absolute unity.
Exactly. And this attention to placement is something al-Ghazali does throughout the book. He's showing us that the Quran isn't just like a collection of verses,
Yeah.
but a meticulously crafted work where structure enhances meaning. For our listener, it encourages you to look for those subtle connections, even in the arrangement of the text.
That's such a great point for anyone approaching the Quran.
It's not just what is said, but how it's said, the context,
Yeah.
the order. It all contributes to the meaning.
Precisely. And this takes us to the verse of the throne, which is a jewel of different kind.
Right.
If the Su'a of sincerity is a diamond for its clarity and precision,
Right.
the verse of the throne is more like a vast, intricate tapestry.
Okay, help me picture this tapestry. What is it about the verse of the throne that al-Ghazali focuses on?
It's the way this verse portrays God's attributes on a grand scale, his dominion over all creation, his eternal nature, his all-encompassing knowledge that evokes awe and wonder. It's less about defining God, more about experiencing his majesty.
And that experience leads to
Humility,
Yeah.
surrender, a sense of our smallness, yet also our being held within God's infinite care. It's like gazing at a star-filled sky
Right.
and realizing the vastness of the universe, but also feeling a sense of belonging within it.
So these two jewel verses, though different in style,
Mm-hmm.
both point us toward deeper knowledge of God, but in ways that go beyond just, intellectual understanding.
You've captured it perfectly. And
Yeah.
this brings us to the crucial question. How do we translate these lofty concepts, these jewels, into everyday living?
Right.
That's where the pearls come into play.
All right, let's dive into the pearls. How does al-Ghazali show us the link between knowing God and acting righteously?
Remember, he was a strong advocate for putting faith into action. He believed true knowledge transforms us. It compels us to live differently. So after discussing the jewels, he guides us towards those verses that provide practical wisdom, the pearl.
So the pearls are like the instructions for how to build our house of faith, using the knowledge of God as our blueprint.
Exactly. And these instructions cover everything. How to pray with sincerity,
Mhm.
how to treat others with kindness and justice, how to manage our wealth ethically, even how to react to difficulties with patience and trust in God's plan.
So for our listener, as you're reading the jewels of the Quran, think about those everyday situations
Yeah.
where you need guidance. Al-Ghazali is saying the Quran offers those pearls of wisdom grounded in the deeper understanding of who God is.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is he doesn't just list rules.
Right.
He draws out the deeper meaning behind each pearl. He'll explain why a certain action is pleasing to God, or how a specific verse connects to the overall message of the Quran.
So it's not just about blindly following rules,
Right.
but understanding the why behind them,
Yeah.
which deepens our connection to both the Quran and to God.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this is where al-Ghazali's brilliance as a teacher really shines through. He makes the Quran come alive, not as a distant text, but
Yeah.
as a guidebook for living a meaningful and fulfilling life.
This is so inspiring.
And-
It makes me want to revisit those verses I thought I understood and look for those deeper layers of meaning.
That's exactly the effect al-Ghazali was going for. He wanted to awaken that thirst for deeper understanding,
Yeah.
that desire to not just read the Quran, but to live it.
And this approach, this focus on both the jewels and the pearls, has had a lasting impact, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about individual readers,
Yeah,
but about al-Ghazali's influence on Islamic thought as a whole.
absolutely. In the next part, we'll explore how the jewels of the Quran has shaped the way Muslims have understood and engaged with the Quran for centuries. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the jewels of the Quran.
We've been exploring al-Ghazali's approach to understanding the Quran,
Mhm.
from his categorization of verses into jewels and
Yeah.
pearls,
Yeah.
to his insightful analysis of specific passages. Now I'm really curious about the bigger picture,
Mhm.
What kind of impact has the jewels of the Quran had on on Islamic thought. We've talked about how it speaks to like
Right.
individual readers.
But what about its place in the larger tradition of Islamic scholarship?
So the Jewels of the Qur'an is considered a cornerstone of Islamic scholarship. It's been studied and debated by scholars for centuries, and its influence can be seen in countless other interpretations and commentaries on the Quran. You know, it's not just a book.
Yeah.
It's sparked a whole conversation, a
Uh.
way of approaching the Quran that continues to this day.
So for our listener, if you were to like walk into a library or a mosque and see people studying Islamic texts,
Yeah.
chances are al-Ghazali's ideas are like woven into those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. What do you think it is about his approach that has made it so enduring?
Well, one reason is that al-Ghazali was like a master at bridging different fields of knowledge.
Right.
He combined rigorous intellectual analysis with
Mhm.
a deep understanding of spirituality, especially Sufism. He wasn't just like explaining the Quran.
Yeah.
He was showing how it connected to like the deepest human longings
Right.
for, you know, for meaning, for connection with the divine, for a life of purpose.
So he took these complex ideas
Mm-hmm.
and made them accessible and relatable,
Yeah.
and most importantly, applicable to how we live our lives.
Exactly. He showed how the Quran speaks to both our hearts and our minds.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a book of rules.
Right.
It's a guide for like navigating the challenges and joys of being human,
Right.
for finding, you know, meaning and purpose in our everyday experiences.
This idea of the Quran as like a living guide
Yeah.
rather than just a historical text.
Mhm.
It feels really powerful, especially in today's world. It's like he's giving us a map for how to live a more fulfilling life, not just in a spiritual sense,
Right.
but in a very practical way.
And that's what's so brilliant about the jewels of the Quran.
Yeah.
It's not just for like scholars or theologians.
Right.
It's for anyone who, you know, wants to understand the Quran on a deeper level
Mm-hmm.
and apply its wisdom to their lives.
I love that. So for our listener, no matter like where you are on your journey,
Yeah.
whether you're a seasoned scholar or just starting to explore, Islam,
Mm-hmm.
al-Ghazali's work, has something to offer you.
Absolutely. And his work continues to be relevant precisely because it speaks to these universal human questions and concerns.
Right.
You know, centuries after it was written, people are still grappling with the same challenges: how to live a good life, how to connect with something bigger than themselves, how to find like peace and meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and confusing.
It's like he anticipated those questions we all have
Mhm.
and offered a framework for exploring them, you know. Using the Quran as our guide, that's a powerful legacy to leave behind.
It is, and one of the things that makes al-Ghazali's work so unique is his emphasis on the importance of personal experience.
Okay.
You know, he wasn't just interested in intellectual analysis. He wanted people to feel the transformative power of the Quran
Yes.
in their own lives.
That reminds me of his discussion of the 3 grades of knowledge,
Right.
especially the knowledge of God's essence, that rare red gemstone.
Yes.
He's saying that some things can't just be like understood intellectually, they have to be experienced, felt, lived.
Exactly. And that's a key element of Sufism as well. The idea that spiritual knowledge comes not just from like books,
Yeah.
but from direct experience, from purifying the heart and opening ourselves to the divine presence.
So for our listener, as you're reading the jewels of the Quran, remember that it's not just about reading words on a page. It's
Yeah.
about engaging your heart, your mind, your whole being in this journey of discovery.
Beautifully said. And that's ultimately al-Ghazali's greatest contribution to Islamic thought.
Mm-hmm.
He showed us that the Quran is not a static text.
Right.
It's a living source of wisdom, guidance, and inspiration, relevant for every generation, every culture, every individual who seeks its treasures.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a new appreciation for the Qur'an
Yeah.
and for al-Ghazali's brilliant insights. It's not just about knowledge, it's about transformation.
I couldn't agree more. And that's what I hope our listener takes away from this deep dive.
Yeah.
The Jewels of the Quran is an invitation to to explore the Qur'an on a deeper level, to connect with its timeless wisdom, and to allow it to transform your heart, your mind, and your life.
So to our listeners, I encourage you to pick up a copy of the Jewels of the Qur'an and embark on your own journey of discovery. Until next time, from Echoes of Ihsan, may peace and blessings be upon you.